Welcome to Comm Week 2021. Thank you all for being here. My name is Jessica Newman. I'm a faculty member here in the Elliott School of Communication, and we are doing this year in true 2021 fashion. We're doing it both live and also streaming for those of you that can't be here, but I'm so excited to see so many faces in the room for those of you that are here. So first up today, we have Fletcher Powell. He is a producer and movie critic and podcast host at KMUW, which is our local NPR affiliate. And he's a great person to open this for us because our theme for this year is media that made us, right? And he reviews and critiques media and produces media for a living. So we thought he would make a really great opening session. And we are just honored to have him here. He does have a brand new newborn at home. And so that's why he's joining us virtually today to keep everyone in his family safe and sound and healthy. And so without further ado, we are so excited to welcome Fletcher Powell. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, Jessica. Another reason I'm a great person to start with is because I'll probably be the least professional presentation that you have this entire week. So you'll get going a little easier. As she said, I am a producer and the film critic at KMUW, the NPR member station here in Wichita, and I'm talking to you from one of my studios, partly because it looks cooler than it would look at my house, partly because I hope it sounds better, me talking into this microphone, and partly because of that tiny human that I have at home. If you could share my screen here just so that I can win everybody over to my side real quick. Yeah, before we get going. She's the one who's at home. She's a complete delight, but she also needs a lot of things, and so she's home with her mother right now, and I'm talking to you. You can come back to me. I will tell you just a little bit about how I got where I am. We can just start when I was in college. I got my undergrad degree at KU in 2002, and that was in psychology, but I did a lot of film studies work there. I was a couple of classes away from getting a film studies degree as well, but I was pretty much done with school by that point, and so I just went ahead and graduated. I did a few other things for a number of years, and then in 2009, I decided to go back to school. And one of my options was Wichita State. Of course, I'm here. I grew up in Wichita, and I was offered the chance to come work as a student intern at KMUW doing audio production work if I went to Wichita State and got my degree there. I had done a fair bit of video production work when I was in college and in the years after that. And so that translated pretty well to audio production work. And so I started working as a producer, a student intern at KMUW. When I graduated in 2010 with my master's degree in communication from the Elliott School there, I started as a reporter here at KMUW. I did that for a couple of years. I transitioned to being an on-air host. And that's where I am now. I host All Things Considered, which is the afternoon news program that NPR runs. I do the local hosting of that. I've been a producer the entire time that I've been here since 2009. And so that means a lot of different things, but it also means recording and doing audio production. And then one of the people that I produced for a number of years was our former film critic, Jim Erickson, who had been the critic here at KMUW for about 40 years, I think. And he left in 2016, and I was able to take over because of my previous experience and some other things that I'll get into here in just a little bit. And so that's what I've been doing since 2016. I've been able to be the film critic here. It's just a small part of my entire job. Basically, I have a full-time job aside from even being the film critic here. But I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. I'm also the only film critic, as far as I know, working for a major outlet here in the entire Wichita area, which covers about 700,000 people in the metro area. And so honestly, that's a little shameful if you ask me. I wish I weren't the only one doing that, but that's the way it is right now, because newspapers have pretty much gotten rid of all of their critics, except for the major papers that are left here in the country. And so I'm what you got if you're looking for a local film critic. As far as media that made me, I'll just jump into that right now, because among the most important people for me were Siskel and Ebert. I grew up as many people did, watching Siskel and Ebert, who I don't know if everybody's familiar with them. They are, sorry, I'm trying to move my mouse there. Okay, if you can pull up the other screen for me? Yep. Siskel and Ebert, Gene Siskel on the left and Roger Ebert on the right. They were major film critics here in the United States. They started basically the idea of two guys talking to each other on screen about movies. Gene Siskel died before a lot of you were even born. In 1999, he died, and then Roger Ebert died a few years back. But they were it. They were the ones who rocketed film criticism into the mainstream. There were plenty of wonderful film critics before them and after them and alongside them, but they were the ones who made it a pop culture thing. They would talk about, say, 4, 5, 6 movies for half an hour, and at the end of that, they would give it the thumbs up and thumbs down. They invented that, and that for better and much for worse, as they would also tell you, that has become a lot of what you get from film criticism. What I really loved about them, aside from the fact that they were on TV every week talking about movies, is that they really brought their analysis to us in plain language. They were a couple of guys who really loved movies. They were also incredibly smart and knew a lot about movies, but they loved them, and they talked to us as if we were people. They didn't talk to us as if they were coming to us from the ivory tower and telling us things that we couldn't possibly understand, us, people who never studied film criticism. They talked to us like we were people, and that is so important, and it became much more common in film criticism, and it's certainly something that I've been able to take on. You can come back to me now, guys, if you want to. Yeah, it's certainly something that I've been able to take on, and something that I hold very important as I do my criticism. It's also something that's really important just for public radio. One of the really important things that we do here is to try to sound like people. We try to sound sort of like a heightened version of what we actually sound like in real life when we're on the radio. And so that really means talking like people talk. We don't try to talk in a printy way. We don't try to use a bunch of words people are going to understand, of course, because we have a smart audience, but they aren't necessarily words that people use in conversation. And so we try to do that in public radio, and that has carried over to my writing as well, taking that on both from the public radio world and from Siskel and Ebert. Another thing that they brought that is just really important to me is the idea of empathy. Roger Ebert, I think, was the one who called movies great empathy generating machines. And what they do is they help us connect to other people and maybe experiences that we haven't had before, maybe experiences we have had and we can really see ourselves in it, but they're able to connect us to the world in a way that we might not have otherwise, like a lot of great art does. But recognizing that has just been really, really important in film criticism, and especially since the two of them really took off in our mainstream. So that's who I am. Why should you care? I'm not sure that I can exactly answer that, but people ask, how do you become a film critic? How are you qualified to do this? I think most critics really came from somewhere else, often in journalism. Often they were writing about other things, sometimes entertainment reporters, but many people who came from a completely different place. What you need, I think, as a film critic is definitely a serious depth and breadth of film knowledge. You need to have watched a lot, and you need to continue to watch a lot. But it's not just that. You need to read a lot. You need to read other critics. There are many critics from the history of film, the past, 130 years, let's say, and they have all brought interesting ideas to us, and you need to read a lot. You need to understand who you like, why you like them, what ideas they may have brought to us that we can hold on to or that we can throw aside. And not only that, but reading a lot of history, a lot of novels, knowing about art and about our world in other ways beyond movies is also important, because tying all of that together is part of film criticism. And then, of course, your ability to articulate your ideas and your feelings and your opinions and to make and defend your arguments. Being able to write is just a really important thing in film criticism. You can't just say this movie is good or this movie is bad. You have to have a lot to say about what's going on, and people have to continue to care why you are talking to them. And that's not always easy. And certainly all of us have people who like what we have to say and people who really don't like what we have to say. And we just need to continue to try to get better at articulating our feelings and defending those arguments that we put forward. So that leads me into what the job of a critic is in general. And you guys can go back to Ebert and Siskel and their thumbs there. The idea of being a film critic is not, in my opinion, to judge whether a movie is quote unquote good or bad. That's the least interesting part of criticism. And Siskel and Ebert, as famous as they became for those thumbs, and it's good for them that they were able to do it because it made them brilliant marketers, but they hated those thumbs because it turned film criticism into this ridiculous duality, this dichotomy where it's either good or it's bad. And obviously that's pretty much where we end up now in the world of film criticism. Of course, everybody knows Rotten Tomatoes, a movie is either fresh or rotten. I mean, but on one day, if I have a middling reaction to a movie, I could make that movie fresh. But the next day, maybe I'm having a little bit of a bad day and I make that movie rotten. The truth is, it's basically right there in the middle. And if all we're doing is thumbs up or thumbs down, fresh or rotten, then we're not really engaging with the movie itself. Often you would hear Siskel and Ebert talk to people who were angry that they gave a movie a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And what they would say is, listen to what I said, listen to the comments that I had about the movie. It's not just about that thumbs up or thumbs down. And so they hated that. I hate that idea. I'm lucky enough that KMUW doesn't make me give stars to movies, because even that is just a snake pit. It's almost impossible really to evaluate a movie and not have people just look at that top line. How many stars did you give it? Did you give it thumbs up or thumbs down? People just don't pay attention to much beyond that. And that's really unfortunate, because what you're trying to do when you are engaging in film criticism, when you're writing about movies, is to bring something new to those movies, bring a new way of thinking about movies into the area, bring almost creating a new art form, a new piece of art out of this existing piece of art. And so whether you're connecting a movie to other parts of our culture, whether you think that it brings out something that we all ought to be discussing, whether you are and bringing up theories of what could be going on in this movie that maybe even the filmmakers didn't have any idea about. That's the great thing about art, is that we're able to engage with it and we're able to create new pieces of art out of that art that didn't exist before. I think of Marcel Duchamp. And did I even put this in here? I did not. That's too bad. Marcel Duchamp, you may be familiar with his painting of the Mona Lisa, where he just put the mustache and the goatee on the Mona Lisa and created this new piece of art using this existing piece of art. It's a lot like that. Mystery Science Theater 3000, maybe a lot of you are familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000. That's what they do. They take existing art that people often think is trash, and they create something new out of it. And so that's what we're trying to do when we do film criticism. Now, when we're writing a weekly review or 3 or 4 reviews in a week, it's not always the easiest thing to do, especially if we have 400 words or 500 words or 300 words to talk about it. But in doing that, in trying in some small way to engage with that art and do something new with it, that helps us to understand more about what we're seeing and more about our world as well. When we talk again about media that made us, criticism is also a part of that. You have all probably heard of cult filmmaking, or when somebody says a movie is really campy. Those ideas came out of criticism, and people took those ideas and then started to try to make art based on those ideas. And so the critics were looking at films and creating these ideas out of them. And then filmmakers started to take those ideas and try to create movies using those ideas. And it all just kind of folds back on itself. It makes me think of something that isn't based in criticism, but it's based in film history. And it's just really interesting to me how this works, how things build on each other and feedback on each other in this recursive way. If you can bring up my screen again, a director who was known early on in American filmmaking was John Ford. He was known for a lot of Westerns. And this was, let's say in the 1930s and the 1940s. And he influenced the Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa, who may be the greatest filmmaker of all time. Obviously, there are a lot of people in the running for that. But Kurosawa loved Ford's movies, and he made a movie that we may know, Seven Samurai. And Seven Samurai was influenced a lot by John Ford's Westerns. And Kurosawa invented a lot of shots in that movie, a lot of situations that then other people took on after that. He, I think, invented the people riding up over the top of a mountain shot, and so you see them in silhouette as they're riding up over the top of the mountain. He invented the idea of gathering together this band of people, as you know, as we see often in heist movies like Ocean's 11 or something. We'll see them getting the gang together. That came out of Seven Samurai and Kurosawa. Well, what that did was really influence Western movies in the United States. And so that right there is The Magnificent Seven, which is a direct remake of Seven Samurai. But those ideas that Kurosawa brought also influenced a bunch of Westerns in the United States. Kurosawa really loved those Westerns, some of those really pulpy Westerns that came after his movie Seven Samurai. And he decided he wanted to make basically what was a samurai version of those pulpy Westerns that came after his movie Seven Samurai. And so he made Yojimbo, which is about a guy with a samurai who comes to a town where there are warring factions, and he plays both sides against each other. And that may sound a little bit familiar because that's also A Fistful of Dollars, which is based directly on Yojimbo, and was, of course, essentially a direct remake of Yojimbo, just as Yojimbo was heavily influenced by those pulpy Westerns like Magnificent Seven, which came from Seven Samurai. And that was heavily influenced by John Ford, the American Western filmmaker, earlier on. It's just one of those examples of how art can feed back on itself, and that extends to criticism just as well as anything else. You can come back to me now. So here we are. I've hopefully at least mentioned a little bit of why criticism is important, at least to someone like me. Now we need to think about how we're going to do it. If you're writing reviews for movies, you know, week to week, and we're not doing necessarily like long form criticism and writing books about particular things, although that's also very interesting and a really important part of criticism. But if you're writing reviews week to week, what you need to recognize right from the beginning is that there's no such thing as objective criticism. No one can possibly look at a movie and objectively evaluate it. We're all bringing our own experiences to that movie. We're bringing our own tastes to that movie. We are bringing ideas that we have had before that maybe pop into our head while we're watching that movie, or maybe there are parts of that movie that we simply don't understand. We don't have the cultural context for that. If I'm watching a movie from Iran or a movie from Malaysia, I may not know everything that's surrounding that. So I can't possibly objectively evaluate these things, and we need to recognize that right away. And it's also why I'm not shy about giving my own perspective, saying the word I in my reviews, because I'm the one talking about it. I can only talk about my experience. Now, what I can do is acknowledge that I have those biases and how they impact my view, and I can tell you about those, and I can tell you that this is something that doesn't typically work for me. For example, me personally, on a personal level, musical theater and movies based on that just don't work for me personally. But I can at least say, hey, how does this work as a movie? That's something I can do. Just as if I were a food critic, and me personally, I can't stand beets, and I've tried them in every possible way, and I just can't do it. But were I a food critic, I could at least tell you, well, the beets are doing what they're supposed to be doing in this dish, and it works in that way, even if I personally don't like it. So that's something that we have to recognize is our own biases, and we need to acknowledge those. We need to be upfront about those, and sometimes that's stuff that we like and that we're a little more likely possibly to evaluate positively. And sometimes that's stuff that we just don't like, and it's really hard for us to grab onto that, but we can understand as a movie how that might work. Something that I'm thinking of particularly, there's a director named Josh Rubin who I think has been around in the comedy world for a while, but he's making movies now, and particularly comedy horror movies. So he's got one that came out a few years ago called Scare Me, and there's another one that came out I think this year called Werewolves Within. His comedy is really aggressive, and it's not something that works for me at all. I don't think it's funny, and I don't enjoy that style of comedy. But his movies are decently executed. He does what he's looking to do, what he's trying to do. It may not play to my taste personally, but I can at least recognize that he's relatively successful in doing the thing that he wants to do. And for a lot of people, they find it really funny. Another thing that we can look at is again, how successful a movie is in trying to do what it's trying to do. What is the movie trying to do, and how well does it do that thing? If the movie is trying to be a dumb comedy, how well does it succeed at that? Is it actually, is there anything clever about it at all? Is there any reason a person would want to be watching it? What about if a movie is trying to be a high-minded World War II movie? If you can pull up my slide, there were 3 World War II movies that came out within about a year of each other. Saving Private Ryan on the top there, The Thin Red Line on the bottom left, and then Life is Beautiful on the right. Now, all 3 were actually up for Best Picture, and not in the same year. Saving Private Ryan and The Thin Red Line were up for Best Picture in the same year, and then Life is Beautiful the year before. But they all succeeded and didn't succeed to various degrees. Now, what Steven Spielberg was trying to do with Saving Private Ryan was show, in a lot of ways, the external side of war. And it's really, of course, really violent. Anybody who's seen it knows it's exceedingly violent, but it's also really effective in that way. Now, whether you think that Spielberg's approach to drama is effective or not, that's up to you. But in doing what it was trying to do, showing that side of war, that really visceral physical side of war, it was very successful. The Thin Red Line on the bottom left is much more philosophical and contemplative. It's really floaty. There's a lot of voiceovers and shots of trees and nature. And really what it was doing was showing the more internal side of war. And for me, it succeeded massively. Terrence Malick is the director, and he's for me, he's just one of the great artists who's ever lived. And so that one was also incredibly successful. Life is Beautiful on the right there was really highly acclaimed at the time, but it's fallen out of favor quite a lot, because what it was doing was telling the story of this guy who gets sent to the concentration camps with his young son. And what he does is invents a game where he pretends that it's not even happening. He acts so that his kid doesn't realize that they're in this concentration camp and they're probably all going to die. And it was well received at the time by a lot of people. A lot of people didn't find it very good. They thought it was pretty distasteful and cloying, and people's opinions of it have fallen a lot more on that side in the years since. And so for a lot of people, that's one that did not succeed at what it was trying to do, while the other 2 did succeed at what they were trying to do. Now, if we try to evaluate them in a different way, without taking into account what they're trying to do, then we're going to fall flat. I remember a lot of people, you can come back to me, a lot of people were dismissive or angry about Spike Lee's movie Do the Right Thing because it didn't address drugs in the Black community in New York. And Spike Lee said, that's not the movie I was trying to make. If you want to make a movie about drugs, you can go ahead and do that, but that's not what I was trying to do. And so people were trying to bring to this movie something that it wasn't trying to do, something that didn't exist within that framework. And so needing to recognize what exactly a movie is trying to do is incredibly important in being able to evaluate that movie. There's another movie coming out pretty soon called National Champions, and the idea behind it is that a star quarterback for a college football team refuses to play in the championship game because he's going to hold out so that student athletes can start getting paid. Now, whether or not that movie succeeds in what it's trying to do, I'll let you decide for yourself. But it is definitely taking a viewpoint that he is in the right, and we need to evaluate it based on what it's trying to do. So all of those things are important in criticism. And also, you just want to make a richer experience for the person who's reading your reviews, reading your criticism, and watching those movies. Maybe you're going to pique their curiosity about something in that movie or other movies that are connected to it. Maybe there's a director that this movie reminds you of from the 1930s or the 1940s, and you want to talk about the connections between this movie and those movies. And maybe that piques the curiosity of the person who's reading what you're having to say. You want to add understanding for people about what they're watching. Maybe some ideas that you think are there that aren't obvious, that aren't right on the surface, and that people may find the movie a richer experience if they're able to see that, or maybe to dig into that a little bit on their own, and maybe follow that path that you've set out for them. Yeah, of course, you're positing theories. A lot of times when we evaluate art, and film falls into that, what we're doing is bringing up theories about what we see that may have no real basis necessarily explicitly in that movie, but we think, hey, maybe maybe this is a thread that I could follow, and we can talk about interesting ideas that this brings up that maybe it never intended in the first place. And then again, as I said from the beginning, creating something new out of that existing art is just, it's one of the most exciting and most valuable parts of film criticism, is that you are creating this new thing that hopefully will then go on and influence other people to make their art. And then, as I said, it just keeps building back and back on itself. And I guess going back to the theme that we laid out here, the media that made us, the media that makes you as a film critic, hopefully you can then take that, build on it, create something new, and make other people's ideas go forward into the future. Movies, media that made them as they go on. Okay, I talked a lot. We can open this up for questions if you'd like. If anybody has questions, you can look at my daughter right here if you want to, as she is giving her first Q&A and choosing people. I don't know if you guys want to share my screen there. You can see her. There you go. Oh, click to add title. That's wonderful. Well, anyway, that was hastily done. But if we have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I don't have a lot more to say on that. All right. And how about we pull up my girl again? You can look at her. Just stare into her beautiful eyes while I wait for questions. There's a chat box if you are watching online. Otherwise, I think Jessica will probably have to ask anything. See, this is the beauty of live technology. We get to do this a lot while I'm on the radio, and dead air is, of course, the worst thing. Don't have dead air. And so I guess I can keep talking.
Can you hear me, Skylar, in the headphones? Okay, well, confusing. Try typing to him in the private chat.
Yeah, type to me in the private chat
and see if he can hear anything. Let me try one more thing. I want to ask. After all this, if we get him, y'all better have some questions.
Did you lose me?
Huh? He can hear me. Fletcher, nod your head. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sweet. So let me explain for 1 second. This is going to be a little weird because I can't turn the volume up to where they can hear you, or they'll hear an echo of me because I'm in the same room. So what I'm going to do is have them ask a question, and then I'm going to really quickly, let me think. So right after they ask the question, mute us. mute the producer, and then I can turn his mic back or his volume back up. Does that work? Okay, so do we have any questions in the chat first?
No, there's nothing there.
Okay, well, this is from Madeline, so I'll read it even though it's there. Can you watch movies for fun, or are you always critiquing? So hang on, let me unmute you.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always watching stuff, and as I said before, this isn't my full-time job being a critic, and so I'm reviewing a movie maybe two a week right now. I can do more if I want to, but as far as on-air stuff goes, that's what's happening. But I am absolutely always watching things, and I would say I can watch them about 80 to 90% for fun. There's always this little part of my brain that's kind of doing stuff if I'm watching a movie, even if it's just some stupid slasher movie or something. I'm still kind of making connections to other things. I'm not necessarily like writing a review or anything in my head while I'm watching it, but there's always this little bit going on in the background there. But that's not bad. That's kind of fun for me. And so that's going to happen anyway. But if I'm just watching something that I know I'm not going to review at all, then yeah, I would say 80 to 90% of that is just leisure and doing it for fun. And it's a little easier. I covered a couple film festivals this fall, the New York Film Festival and the Tallgrass here, and when that was done, I kind of just wanted to watch a bunch of garbage because I was really tired of high-minded stuff. And so, I just watched a bunch of bad horror movies after that for about a week. And that was fun. Yeah, that was great. So do I have a favorite movie right now? Oh gosh. That's really hard. I really love The French Dispatch, that came out a few weeks ago. It's honestly, it's one of the two movies I've seen in an actual theater this year. The other one was The Green Knight back in the summer, which I also thought was fantastic. Those are really good. There's always good stuff going on. I'm getting a lot of screeners right now for like year-end awards season, and so I'm getting a lot of really good movies sent to me. And so it's a little hard to say exactly without going through my list of movies that I watched, to tell you just off the top of my head what I am really liking right now. I'm watching a lot of stuff. I watch, I'm watching stuff all the time, and so that remembering what the heck I just watched is sometimes a little bit hard unless I just go back and look at my list. Do I watch Netflix or what? Yeah, sure. I mean, how many streaming platforms do we have now? It's I don't even know if I can count. But yeah, there's stuff everywhere, and there's good stuff everywhere. And some places have better things than others. The Criterion Channel, if anybody knows what that is of course just delightful. It's got a zillion movies, old stuff, new stuff. I love watching foreign movies, and especially movies not from Western countries. And so, say a lot of East Asian or South Asian or Southeast Asian. I really like African movies as well, and they're hard to get a hold of, but it's a different approach to filmmaking and a different approach to sometimes social critique that's really fascinating to me. And so, I it's just another way of, I guess, expanding my ideas about movies and consuming as much as I can so that I can continue to grow in that way.
I'm unmuted. Okay. I'm going to come over. Fletcher, can you hear us? Give us a nod. Beautiful. I'm just going to walk over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
You don't even have to touch it.
Thank you. Hey, Fletcher, just wondering, with all the movies that are out there, how do you decide what movies you're going to watch to critique?
Okay.
Yeah, me, I have the luxury of being pretty picky about what I'm going to review because I do only have officially one or two reviews a week that go out on air, and everything else I can just kind of do what I want to do. So, prior to the pandemic, I kind of just reviewed whatever was coming out that week in the theaters here in Wichita. Once the pandemic hit, I kind of got the idea that really what people needed was not necessarily me telling them that this stupid comedy was bad, but maybe pointing them toward things that would be worth their time, especially as we were all, sitting at home and not able to go anywhere and feeling horrible. So for a good year, I really kind of tried to lean in that direction. Now, not exclusively, but if you went and looked at my reviews over, let's say from April of 2020 till April of 2021, almost all of them are going to be relatively or very positive. Not because I was trying to say that all movies were good, but because I was able to be picky about what I was putting out there, because I felt like I was really serving people better that way. Now, since things have opened up a little bit more, I've gone back a little bit to just kind of seeing what's coming out each week, and maybe something a little bit bigger that people are paying attention to, but not so big as like the superhero movies, because nobody really needs me to add to that discussion, with my review. If I were writing longer form work, then maybe, but nobody really needs me to tell them, what I thought of the latest Marvel movie. It's just not that interesting. And so I'll maybe try to find something that's a little bit more off the beaten path, or maybe something that people are still able to watch at home, because like me, a lot of people are not really going out to the movie theater. That's changing, but so there's so much started to be released on streaming platforms when the pandemic hit, that those options exist a lot more now than they did before. And so I still lean a little bit toward maybe pointing people in the direction of something that they might find interesting, but not exclusively. I watched I'm thinking of some stuff that I gave not so good reviews to over the past 6 months or something. Cry Macho, with the Clint Eastwood movie. That's one that I think came out on HBO the same day that it came out in theaters. And I didn't love it, but there were people who did like it. And so, I tried to do my best to evaluate it based on how I saw it, but also to acknowledge that there are things in it that didn't work for me that might work for other people. Something like Halloween Kills, which came out, I guess around Halloween, that I wouldn't say was a good movie, and a lot of people hated it, but I thought it was doing some things that maybe other people didn't really recognize in it. And so I think my review was more nuanced than, this is just a slasher movie, because I didn't think it exactly was. And I think it was trying to do some things that maybe didn't work, but it was trying things, and I appreciate that. So yeah, how do I decide? I just kind of see what's out there. I definitely try to do something that just came out or came out within the past couple weeks. Maybe point people towards something that they might have missed, and maybe talk about whatever is really getting a lot of traction in other critical circles to see if my feelings reflect those or not. It kind of varies.
I had one. So you mentioned a couple of things like musical theater movies, how you don't really love them. Superhero movies. Are there any genres that you won't review just because you think you have too much of a bias?
No, I don't think so. There's, like I said, there's stuff that, there's stuff that generally doesn't connect with me. But I reviewed Tick Tick Boom recently, which, on a personal level, I didn't really enjoy it, because it's not, it's just not my style. But I really, really liked some of the things that Lin-Manuel Miranda was doing to adapt it from the stage to the screen. And I thought those were really interesting and really fun. And I thought Andrew Garfield was really fun. And I thought he was fantastic. So, the thing about, I think, almost every movie is that there's probably something in there worthwhile. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean every movie is worthwhile by far, but often there's something, whether it's a single shot or whether it's a performance that's worth paying attention to. Just like there are very, very few perfect movies. And so most movies have something that might be wrong with them. Finding those nuances is part of the fun for me, and part of what I think can be really valuable. And again, goes back to why thumbs up and thumbs down and fresh and rotten is so useless, because most movies are somewhere in the middle, whether they're 10% good or whether they're 70% good. There's still room on the other side. So, yeah, there's definitely no genre that I simply wouldn't watch. Are there directors that I refuse to watch on a personal level? Probably, yeah, but not as a reviewer. I mean, if I feel like I need to see it for some reason, then yeah, there's nothing that'll stop me from reviewing it. I don't think I have that strong a bias in any case.
I was going to ask, I know you mentioned a lot of critics have backgrounds in journalism. When you're moving to critiquing films, and it's, like you said, it's really hard to be objective, how do you remain credible with your audience to where they trust your opinion?
Well, I think there are plenty of people who probably don't trust my opinion, and part of that is just generally a matter of taste. I mean, there are critics that I don't like at all, and then there are others that I really do like, and sometimes it's because of the writing, and sometimes it's because my tastes seem to run alongside theirs for the most part, and so I can trust that what they're doing, what they're saying about a movie is likely to be similar to what I feel. Not always, of course, but maintaining that trust with my audience, just as a critic and as a writer, I hope, again, being able to express my opinions, to articulate those intelligently, and hopefully to demonstrate that I do have some level of knowledge, of film knowledge, whether that's technique or whether that's film history, other filmmakers, being able to demonstrate that I do have some level of knowledge, and being able to articulate my feelings, my arguments in a way that people can understand, and that hopefully doesn't feel like I'm talking down to anybody. I think that's just incredibly valuable. And like I said, not just as a film critic, but in public radio too, because it's really easy to feel like people are being snobby when they're trying to talk about important topics, or trying to talk about something in an intelligent way. It's really easy to feel like someone is talking down to you, and that's not what I want. I hope that's not what I do. If it is, then I'm really failing, honestly. So I think just being able to articulate what I want to say, and doing it in a way that treats other people like human beings, I hope that maintains credibility.
Any last questions before we close up? Okay. All right, hearing none on our end, Fletcher, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy your newborn.